You've heard it all before. What you do today will follow you through the rest of your life. Except now you're not a kid. No curfew, no parents nearby. It's all up to you. So take a couple minutes to hear this rapid fire interview, how to have fun but avoid problems that could follow you, and what to do if you do get in trouble. Welcome to Expert Connections. I'm Julie Holton. We're joined today by our legal connections expert, Dan Zick, a litigation attorney at Foster Swift. Hi, Dan. Thanks for being here.
Hi, Julie. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, Dan. So, all right, parents, feel free to skip over to the next video. Today, we are talking directly to your kids, your young adults. We've heard it all before, Dan, the dangers of social media. Credit problems now can impact you for years, underage drinking, recreational marijuana if you're not 21, or if you're driving, all things we should not be doing, students should not be doing. How serious do these offenses get and the consequences?
Well, they can range from minor trouble at school or putting something online. They get you a phone call from mom saying, hey, that shouldn't be on there. What are you doing? To very serious. And we're talking criminal charges. We're talking felony charges in some cases. If you do something reckless or stupid that injures another person or, even worse. So the consequences can completely range from minor to the most severe.
All right, so let's break it down. What are the legal dangers of social media? Not what are the pictures my mom's not going to like, or what do I not want my professor to see, but the content that can actually get someone into legal hot water.
Well, first thing is students should be aware, never post anything on social media depicting yourself doing anything illegal. I think a prosecutor would be thrilled to find that in a case where you're facing criminal charges and your Facebook becomes, and I'm probably dating myself by saying Facebook, but your social media accounts become just a gold mine of evidence sometimes because people put evidence of themselves doing illegal things online. You wouldn't think that it happens, but I've talked to prosecutors here in town that have said they have found things that would shock you that people would be willing to put online. And another thing that young people in particular need to keep in mind is never post anything sexually explicit of another person online without their consent. That is illegal in the state of Michigan. That can result in criminal charges. It's a terrible idea. Even if it was shared with you by that person, do not put it online without their consent. So those two things you really need to be mindful of. They're easy to avoid too. So just don't do it.
Just don't do it. I like it. All right. Next up, credit problems. What are some of the biggest landmines to avoid?
Well, we've talked before in other segments about these free T-shirts that you can get for filling out a credit card application. Store credit cards, for example, if you want to get some clothes and you're going to rack up a store credit card, students need to be aware that every time you take out a credit card or open a new line of credit, not only does that go on your credit report, but your credit is actually harmed each time your credit is pulled. So that type of conduct is going to have consequences later in life. If you've got a bunch of credit card debt you need to pay off, or if you've got a credit score that's going to preclude you from financing a vehicle, for example. Credit can also come into play in a lot of other situations as well. Some employers will pull your credit. If you plan on going to law school, they're going to do a credit check sometimes. Certainly after law school when you apply to the state bar. So you need to be aware that your long-term plans can be affected by the health of your credit.
It can also be really tempting to take that financial aid check or perhaps money from mom and dad and spend it before paying rent. What are some issues you see with credit and housing?
Well, in terms of housing, students need to be mindful that not paying their rent can have consequences beyond just conflict with your current landlord. If your landlord takes you to court, there's going to be a public record of that action if it's an eviction action. And that can also go on your credit report, and that can affect your credit score. What that could do is affect future opportunities where if you're applying to live somewhere the next year, they're going to see that your last landlord had to file a collections action against you. Or they might pull your credit and see that your credit is negatively affected because of a judgment for unpaid rent. So it's not going to just affect your housing now, it's going to affect your housing in the future.
And those background checks, we're talking criminal and credit checks. You've talked several times on Expert Connections now about the more widespread availability of third-party background checks. Why is this something that's important to think about now?
Well, those type of background checks are utilized not just by landlords, but future employers are going to use it in many situations. It can affect your ability to get jobs in the future. It can affect your ability to apply for scholarships or grants. It can affect your ability to apply to grad school. Those missteps now are going to affect how things go for you going forward in a lot of ways. So you need to be mindful that trashing your credit in college, it can't always just be chalked up to being young and making some poor decisions. It's going to follow you into adulthood.
All right, for our trade school and college students, what about plagiarism, cheating, misconduct? Can there be long-term consequences here beyond what we might think of as the typical immediate response?
Absolutely. I think most students would think the immediate response is going to be, if a teacher catches me, I'm going to get in trouble. But trouble at this point in your life is very different than it was in high school. You are going to be treated as an adult, and plagiarism specifically is grounds for expulsion in a lot of schools. It can get you kicked out of school, and you need to think about the fact that financial aid, grants, any loans you took out, any scholarships you were awarded for school, those are things that are not only going to be lost, but that's now debt that you're going to have to pay back without the benefit of a college degree. The other thing is, if you do want to continue your academic career somewhere, you're going to have to disclose that. If you want to go on to graduate school, you're going to have to disclose that as well. And those are things that are taken into account and can continue to harm you. I've said it before, I think on here, you've gotten this far by doing the work. Cutting corners now and cheating and plagiarizing papers, it just doesn't make sense, and it's not worth the risk.
And certainly, even as you mentioned, grad school, some people like yourself, becoming an attorney, becoming a doctor, those types of programs require those in-depth checks, ethics, conduct. So let's talk now about criminal charges, things like minor in possession, getting caught with a fake ID, public intoxication. Are these things that can be easily handled especially if you're perhaps under 21? Or is this a misconception that students can have charges expunged from their records?
Well, expungement is an option, and it was recently expanded in Michigan, but it's never something that anybody should rely on. It's not an excuse to say, I'm going to go out here and drink and drive because there's the potential that if I get caught, I could have it expunged. There's no guarantee of expungement, especially for those over the age of 18. It's at the discretion of the trial court judge in most cases, and they can simply say no. The other thing is, it's not always available to people if there's multiple infractions, or if there's significant harm beyond just a simple act of drinking. If you are caught drinking and get a minor in possession, maybe you can have that expunged. But if you're caught drinking and you drive a vehicle and you injure somebody, that's not coming off your record. And you should never count on, it's okay, this is all going to go away in the future. That's not something students should rely on.
So how can criminal problems impact financial aid, scholarships, grants? Is there an impact?
Absolutely. Certain criminal charges can disqualify somebody from receiving financial aid. Certain charges can disqualify students from receiving grant money, like a federal Pell Grant. And a lot of scholarships are conditioned on students exhibiting good behavior while in school and good conduct. So you can also lose scholarship opportunities. Extracurriculars that you're involved in can also be jeopardized. And criminal charges can also affect future housing opportunities. So there are lots of long-term ramifications that can come academically.
All right, Dan, if something does go wrong or if a mistake's already been made, what now? What's the next step?
If the mistake's been made and there's already criminal trouble that's pending, or even trouble with a landlord and housing situation, best advice is to follow up with an attorney who's knowledgeable in that area and can assist you. Criminal charges are not something that a student's typically going to be able to navigate themselves, and an attorney can help mitigate the harm that results from those. And if you're having housing issues, there are resources available, such as legal services, that can help guide you through that process and maybe help prevent an eviction action. So definitely seek legal help if you're facing any of these problems.
You can head over to fosterswift.com for additional resources and information from Dan. We've also created a link for you on our website, expertconnections.tv. And be sure to look for more of our interviews with Dan. Subscribe right now so you don't miss a single Expert Connections interview. Dan Zick from Foster Swift, thanks again.
Thanks, Julie.